Emily's life had always been painted in shades of silence. Living with her relatives after her parents passed away, she was treated less like family and more like a burden. Every day she woke up before sunrise, made breakfast, cleaned the house, and left for her job at a small bookstore downtown. The bookstore was the only place where she felt a faint sense of peace, rows of novels whispering stories of hope she couldn't imagine for herself. But when the day ended, she had to return to the house that never felt like home. Her relatives mocked her dreams, insulted her efforts, and reminded her constantly that she was worthless. Emily never answered back. She would lower her eyes and quietly walk to her room, wishing the walls could swallow her pain. One evening, after arriving home late from work, she was met with anger. "Where were you? Do you think you can live here for free?" her uncle shouted. He demanded her savings and threatened to throw her out if she didn't obey. Emily froze. Her chest tightened, her hands trembled. In that moment, she felt as if her entire story was being erased, like she was nothing more than an unwanted character in someone else's book. That night, she lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if her life was doomed to end this way, trapped, voiceless, and broken. She didn't know that destiny was preparing a turn in her story. Very soon, a stranger would walk into her life, not just as a customer at the bookstore but as someone who would see her pain, hear her silence, and help her find the courage to write a new beginning. The rain poured heavily that evening, drumming against the glass windows of the bookstore. Emily stayed back after closing hours, slowly arranging books on the shelves. It wasn't that the work demanded extra time, she simply dreaded going home. The thought of her uncle's harsh words and her aunt's cold glares made her chest feel heavy. So she lingered, dusting shelves that were already clean, pretending she had a reason to stay. Just as she was about to switch off the lights, the door creaked open. A tall man stepped inside, shaking rain from his jacket. Beside him was a little girl, no older than 6, clutching his hand tightly. Emily hesitated, then greeted them softly. The man smiled warmly and explained, "Sorry for coming so late. My daughter wanted a bedtime storybook, and this was the only store still open." Emily knelt to Lily's level and asked gently, "What kind of story do you like?" The girl's eyes sparkled, one with princesses, but also adventures. She giggled. For the first time in weeks, Emily's lips curved into a real smile. She led them to the children's section and picked out a book. But before they left, Lily tugged at Emily's sleeve. "Can you read me one page? Please?" Emily glanced at the father nervously, but he nodded. She opened the book and began reading. Her voice, though shaky at first, softened into rhythm, filling the store with warmth. Lily's eyes widened with joy, and Daniel, her father, noticed how Emily transformed in that moment. When the story ended, Lily clapped. Daniel looked at Emily, sensing something unspoken in her silence, a quiet storm behind her eyes. He didn't know her story yet, but he felt one thing with certainty. This young woman needed kindness, and maybe, just maybe, fate had brought them together for a reason. The next few days passed in a blur for Emily. She continued her routine, working at the bookstore by day, enduring her relatives' cruelty by night. But inside, she was breaking apart. Her uncle's demands grew harsher. One evening, when she refused to hand over her savings, his anger turned violent. He slammed his fist on the table, shouting, "You're nothing without us. If you don't obey, we'll make sure your story ends right here." Emily's hands shook as she clutched her small purse, her heart pounding with fear. That night, she cried silently into her pillow, wishing someone, anyone, would hear her silent plea. By morning, her eyes were swollen, but she forced herself to work. When Daniel returned to the bookstore with Lily, he immediately noticed the change. Emily's wrist bore faint bruises, and though she tried to hide them under her sleeves, Daniel's sharp eyes caught it. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Emily froze, her throat tightening. For years, she had kept her pain hidden, but something in his voice, steady, kind, without judgment, broke the dam. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered fragments of her truth. She spoke of her parents' death, the relatives who took her in only to crush her spirit, and the threats that haunted her every night. It was the first time she had spoken these words aloud. Daniel listened quietly, not interrupting, his expression firm yet compassionate. When she finished, She lowered her gaze, ashamed of her tears. But Daniel leaned forward and said softly, "Emily, you don't deserve this. No one does. You are stronger than you think, and you're not alone anymore." For the first time in years, Emily felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps her story didn't have to end in silence. Perhaps this was the moment it could begin again. Emily's relatives quickly noticed the shift in her. She no longer cowered as much, no longer obeyed without question. The small flicker of courage Daniel had sparked inside her began to grow, and that made her uncle furious. One evening, as she was leaving the bookstore, they were waiting outside. Rain clouds gathered overhead, mirroring the storm that was about to break. Her uncle stepped forward, his voice loud and cruel. "You think you can walk away from us? You belong to us, Emily. Don't forget who feeds you." His wife sneered, adding, "No one will care if you disappear." Emily's breath caught in her throat, but before she could reply, Daniel appeared at her side, Lily holding his hand. His presence was steady, like a wall shielding her. "She doesn't belong to you," Daniel said firmly, his eyes locked on the uncle. "You don't own her life." The relatives laughed bitterly, but Daniel didn't back down. He pulled out his phone, showing the bruises he had quietly photographed earlier with Emily's permission. "I've already spoken to the authorities," he warned. "If you touch her again, you'll answer for every scar you've left." For once, Emily didn't hide behind silence. Her voice trembled, but she finally said the words she had always feared to speak. "I'm not your prisoner anymore. I choose my own life." Her uncle faltered, rage flashing in his eyes, but the weight of Daniel's unwavering stance and the looming threat of justice forced him to retreat. As they walked away, Emily's knees weakened, but Daniel steadied her. Lily smiled up at her and whispered, "You were so brave." And for the first time, Emily truly believed it. Months had passed since that stormy night. Emily was no longer the same fragile girl who walked with her head lowered and her voice locked inside her chest. The court had taken her relatives' threats seriously, and though the road to justice wasn't easy, she finally found freedom. She moved into a small apartment near the bookstore, its walls bare but filled with peace, a kind of peace she had never known before. Her days took on a gentle rhythm. She poured her energy into her work at the bookstore, organizing shelves, recommending novels to customers, and even starting a small corner for children's story hours. Laughter began to return to her life, her own, genuine and unforced. Daniel and Lily became her constant companions. On weekends, they would visit her, sometimes with homemade meals, sometimes just to sit and share stories. Lily adored Emily, often curling up beside her during storytime. "You tell the best stories in the world," Lily would say, her eyes shining with admiration. Each time, Emily's heart swelled with a warmth she had never felt growing up. One afternoon in the park, while Lily ran ahead chasing butterflies, Daniel turned to Emily. His voice was gentle, but his words carried weight. "They tried to end your story," he said, looking at her with quiet conviction. "But you've proven something. They don't get to decide your ending. You do. And this is just the beginning." Emily felt tears gather in her eyes, but this time, they weren't from sorrow. They were from gratitude, from hope. She smiled, the sun casting a golden glow around her. For the first time, she believed in her own strength. Her story hadn't ended in pain, it had only just begun. And this new chapter was hers to write.